Good morning and welcome to the next installment of the Esri Emergency Management webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about how to communicate more effectively with the Story Map Journal. My name is Chris McIntosh. I'm the Emergency Management Industry Manager for Esri, and I'm joined by my colleague Jeff Barani, who's the Technical Lead for Emergency Management. Thank you for joining us. The agenda for today's presentation, we're going to go through an overview of the webinar series. We're going to show examples of using the Story Map Journal for different workflows within emergency operations. Jeff is going to show how to configure a Story Map Journal very quickly so that you can learn how simple it is to set this up. We're going to do a quick update of ArcGIS for emergency management, go through some of the things the disaster response program is doing, and then next steps in our next webinar. So the purpose of these webinars is to provide you, the community, updates on using ArcGIS to support emergency management and disaster response from members of the public safety team here at Esri. We do this normally the first Thursday of every month, so you can put it on your calendar and be prepared for the next one. We migrate topics between broad platform-wide topics or specifics on how to use a particular application or template. The next topic we're pretty excited about is the mitigating hazards and assessing risk with ArcGIS Online. It'll be presented by members of the Esri Solutions team, and this is a new solution template that's coming out to help you with the mitigation phase of the emergency management cycle. Today's topic, communicating more effectively with the Story Map Journal. If you have ideas for other topics in the future, please let us know. A blog recently was put out by the team here on GeoNet. If you don't have access to GeoNet, recommend that you go ahead and get access. We're going to be putting monthly blogs out on various topics through this forum. There could be some blogs from users who are using the geospatial platform for good work that they're doing, or it could be blogs from our team, how-tos or in-depth articles about specific topics or solutions that are available to you. So you see the URL there. Just look up GeoNet and the public safety area, and you'll be able to find these blogs, and hopefully they'll be a good information repository for you. Also, if you've missed one of these webinars or you want to go back and review something that was in one of these webinars, they're being posted, they're being recorded and posted on the Esri Emergency Management Industry webpage. You can go into the webpage and you can go down to the videos section and you'll see them there under the videos. All the webinars that have been part of this series are there. You can go ahead and click on that arrow to scroll through them, find the one you like, and replay it at your convenience. So hope you'll use that and find those useful. Now, one of the core workflows in an emergency operations center is information sharing, both within and without the EOC. And this can be a challenge. You often see paper maps up on the walls printed out, as you see in this picture, and that's how situation briefings are done and situational awareness is shared. Well, this is obviously not very portable. It's definitely not dynamic. It can be time late, and so one of the things that the Story Map Journal can be used for is making this process more real-time and dynamic and portable for your stakeholders and customers that are distributed across the incident, outside of your EOC, in the affected areas, or in other EOCs that are working together to effect a combined response. Often we also see PowerPoint presentations being used. I know back when I was working in an emergency operations center, we would have our morning ops brief. The PowerPoint was developed to support that briefing, and then it was left up at the front of the EOC and left running for several hours until the next briefing cycle. Again, these are not very dynamic, they're not real time, and of course as time goes on they become more and more time latent in the information that they're providing. They don't reflect the changes in circumstances and in situations. An example of how this happened to me is I was dealing with a hurricane, And inside of one briefing cycle, the hurricane came on shore and passed through the entire state and exited, and the briefings were not updated until after the storm had actually left the state. So between the morning brief and the afternoon's brief, the situation had changed radically, and the briefing and the PowerPoints that were available did not keep up with that. So the Story Map Journal allows for a way to make sure that the briefings are current, real-time, portable, and mobile, so that people across different jurisdictions, different EOCs, people who are out in the field, all have that combined awareness of what's going on, and it's maintained in its current state, and people are getting the most current information. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Jeff, and he's going to show you the Story Map Journal in action, how it can be set up and how it's being used to solve these problems of latency in briefing and latency in information sharing. So go ahead, Jeff.
Great, thanks Chris, and good morning everyone. Yeah, so we first want to start by taking a look at a couple of examples of story maps in action. And so this first example I want to show is kind of think of this from the incident perspective. So this was a story map journal that was put together for the Nepal earthquake, and you notice, here we've got, a web page on the left-hand side in this case. We've got some narrative text, on the right-hand side, and this is kind of the concept of the story map journal. And we can flip through the various pages or maps that are available to us here in the Story Map Journal. This has been a great way to collect a lot of the different information, the information products that are developed for a specific incident or response. And it's a real interactive way to be able to navigate through some of the content here and see what's available. And so I can, in the case of Nepal, now I've got a 3D view even of some of the information. I continue to and can look through some of the other information products that are provided. So in this case, indexing, taking a look at a story map tour that's been put together to showcase some of the damage and give a sense of what's happened on the ground. Another key, so story maps are a great way to combine, maps, videos, images, and either other applications all together in a single web application to really give the sense of what's going on for a specific event. And one kind of last thing in this first example is we wanted to show that we can bring out and highlight summary information. So in this case, the web version of the operations dashboard has actually been put together inside of a page inside the Story Map Journal to give us a sense of really summary information. These are the types of things that executives or decision makers are looking for, is being able to bubble up some of this summary information up to the top. So we found that this medium was a great way to kind of convey the devastating impact of incidents like the Nepal earthquake, last year, and kind of an easy-to-use way. So incidents is, putting together story map journals for incidents is one way that we see that the emergency management disaster response communicate value out of the story map journal. Another example is Chris kind of mentioned it can be for simply briefing purposes. So and I'll show an example of how to create this here later on in the webcast. So instead of having to go look at many different web pages or sources for what may be going on throughout the jurisdiction through the course of the day, we can put that together in a story map journal as well. So here I have different maps showing different aspects of what may impact our jurisdiction. So I can see severe weather and the recent tornadoes that have gone through the southeast in the past couple days. I can see if there's any hurricanes that may be impacting our jurisdiction. I can get a sense of the flooding situation and look at the stream gauges and what they're showing, what levels, the forecasted precipitation and the actual precipitation. I can get a sense of any of the last earthquakes that may be significant in impacting an area, even interact with this and get details from the pop-up and drill into and get more details. Obviously these aren't pictures, these are interactive maps, and they're live and dynamic, and as the information is updated in the maps, we see this information in real time. Again, we can also not only embed maps, but also applications as well. So in this case, from a daily situation awareness briefing perspective, we might want to look at where is it going to snow over the next 24 to 72 hours, and this application here tied up inside the briefing, the story map journal, is a great way to see this. Oftentimes, we want to get a sense of what hazards may be impacting our jurisdiction. So, and sometimes we call this a kind of a briefing book, configuration of the story map journal. So in this case, I've taken, think of this, particular example as a catalog of hazards data for the U.S. and I can flip through the various pages. One of the interactions that you can set up with inside the story map journal is these are called actions. So if I want to zoom in to a particular area inside a particular page and get more context and really focus my users on a couple of particular areas, I can do this with these actions here, and being able to zoom into a location is just one example. So in this case, I can continue to flip through the pages of this hazards story map journal. I've even provided links here to the source web map, so if you wanted to include this in your own story map journals, you can do that. And this is a public story map journal. We'll send the link to you after the webcast. But just wanted to give you a sense of a couple of different uses of the story map journal for the emergency management mission. The first one we showed was kind of from the incident perspective and how you might use this at a particular incident. And the second one from a daily briefing perspective and configuring the story map journal that way. And the last in this final example was more from a hazards perspective and operationalizing some of the elements that may be in your hazard mitigation plans and making this interactive and accessible through the story map journal. So those are just a couple of quick examples that we wanted to show to give you context of how to use this particular application. So how do you get started? How do you get started to build a story map journal for your use? Well, the one way to start is inside the web map. So if you've got a particular web map that you want to start with, simply go to the share dialog, and the key thing here is we want to create a web app and the particular web app that we want to create is the story map journal. So you browse for the story map journal in the carousel of web apps that come with ArcGIS Online or Portal, and we want to select that as the option that you want to configure for your use and for your specific purpose, whatever that may be. So the next you're presented with this decisions, like a series of configuration options for how you want your story map journal to look and operate. So the first decision to make is the style. Do you want your side panel to be docked on the side, or do you want it to be floating on top of your map and allow more real estate for the map or the information that you want to show behind the scenes? So that's the first option to select here. Next, the next option is to pick the title for your application. What's the descriptive title that you want to employ here? And I appreciate the story map team providing some inspirational quotes from a storytelling perspective to help you think about the particular title that you want to create in building and configuring your application. Next is the next set of decisions is what they call the main stage content. What do you want to feature on the main page inside your story map journal? And there's 4 different options here to choose from in configuring the story map journal. The first is a map, just like the construct of a map, like the paper maps we saw on the wall from the Southern California wildfire siege in 2003. Obviously, we have our information organized in a map form, and now hopefully in web map form, and we can simply pick the web maps or series of web maps that we want to highlight and use in our story map journal. Now there's a couple of other knobs and dials that you can turn here on this particular page. You can change the default location of the map, the content in terms of what layers you want to have turned on. You can also have pop-ups turned on by default if you wanted to highlight a specific element or feature on the map. Those are all options to configure here in this main stage content section of the map. Additionally, you can include standard mapping elements like an overview map or legend if you choose to. The second type of content that you can add to the main stage is simply an image. This can come from, the web and like Flickr or Facebook, of photos, or simply pasting in a URL to an image that helps give context to the situation or the particular story or that you want to tell with your story map journal. Additionally, videos are supported. This is another element that's supported inside the story map journal to provide some, rich context to the particular situation that you're, talking about and in your focused application here. These can come from YouTube's, or this can either come from YouTube or directly embedding, videos from a URL. Those are all options within inside the story map journal. The last type of content here within inside the main stage is a web page. Now, this can be simply a static, web page like we showed in the first page of the Nepal example, but these can also be applications as well. So whether that's the operations dashboard, the public information map, other apps that are available through the platform, those can be configured as pages, if you will, within inside the story map journal as well. So, in thinking about how you want to organize and put together your story map journal, those are 4 different options for how you want to include elements on the page within inside your story map journal. The next step is to put in the content for the side panel. So I like to think of this like a blog. It's got a similar type, blogging interface here where we can put in text. We can also insert images or videos right inside the side panel, provide hyperlinks to other, content, if we will. And this is a great place to keep information up to date. So instead of filling out information on a PowerPoint, as Chris kind of talked about at the beginning, some of that dynamic descriptive information that we want to communicate to our users, we can use the side panel inside the story map journal to convey that information. What's the things that we need to be worried about today? Is there going to be snow in the Rockies, or is there a hurricane approaching the East Coast, or is there some particular narrative that you want to additionally add to the map to give context to the situation in the story map journal that you're creating? And we'll show that to you here in a few minutes. Also, one thing that's specific to the story map journal itself is the concept of main stage actions. So we can add additional behavior to the map or that particular page to change the content. Maybe there's a series of maps that we want to walk people through along a particular theme, whether maybe that's emergency support functions or essential elements of information, or whatever the case may be. If there's a series of maps or apps that we want to lead people through in a particular section, we can use main stage actions to do that, to basically change the content of that particular page using the 4 different types that we talked about, or zoom into a specific location as we showed in our example a few minutes ago. From a settings perspective, there's some additional knobs and dials that you can turn to give to really kind of brand or give some real theme to your story map journal as you're putting that together. You can make decisions on whether you want the side panel to be on the left or right, and decide how much real estate you want to dedicate to that side panel. Do you really want to focus on the map content, or is there more room that you want to provide for the narrative side panel text? Also change the theme. What's the color scheme that you want to use for the map? Even make decisions on the particular fonts that you want to set up inside your application. And last, and this is maybe one of the more important settings here, is how do you want to brand this? Is there a logo for your organization, your jurisdiction? Do you want to apply and provide a link to a main web page or the like for your particular story map journal? So those are some of the key settings inside the story map journal, and I'll show this to you live here in a few more minutes. One other feature that I wanted to highlight is this is a relatively new feature within inside the story map. So if you go to this URL up here and log in, you'll be able to see all of your story map journals that you've created. And there's some extra features inside here that allow you to check the content. There's some recent smarts that have been added in here by the story maps team to check for any issues inside your story map. For example, are you map journal public, but yet one of the web maps inside there, maybe that hasn't been made public yet. And this tool will help you go through the checks to make sure that there's no issues with your story map, and allow you to make sure that your readers, your users can get access to this information and there's no issues. So again, this is a relatively new feature, and I encourage you to check this out as you're working to create your own story map journals for your organization. And then last but not least, don't forget some of the ArcGIS Online best practices for creating items. Things like creating a good thumbnail. A thumbnail will not be created for you automatically for your story map journal, so make sure that you make a good thumbnail for your item within inside ArcGIS Online. Provide a good description that provides some of the content. Make sure that you filled out your profile appropriately with inside ArcGIS Online, so if users have additional questions, they can follow up with you. And finally, tags. So tag your items appropriately so they can be discovered when people are searching for various things, like we talked about the specific name of the incident. Maybe thinking about using the incident hashtag as a tag here inside the item description. And these are, again, just some general ArcGIS Online best practices that we want to make sure they get employed. Don't want the story map journal police to come after if you've made a great story map. So these are things that we found that are best practices that make the content even more usable, make it help people confidence that this is coming from an authoritative source, and again, just some best practices to follow. So in the email that we send you after the webcast, we'll provide some links on some of these topics, some recent blog posts that provide some good details, and we'll also have been tweeting out some of that information this morning with some particular links. So, okay, so now that I've kind of shown you in slide form how to create a story map journal, I want to take some time to actually show you how to do that live. So I'm going to open up my web map here, and so this is the particular web map that I want to start with in building my story map journal. And you can see that I'm logged into ArcGIS Online and logged in with my credentials. So I'll go up here to the share dialog, and I'll hit create web map, and I'll go look for the story map journal inside here, the set of apps that are available to us as a part of ArcGIS Online. So let's go ahead and say create web map, and I'll put in my title here. This is the title that will be displayed in the item. So we'll say this is a daily situation awareness briefing. This is what we're doing in the webinar. You can see that it automatically picked up some of the tags that were associated with that particular web map. If there's something else, another tag that I want to enter in here, I can do that. Put in a brief summary here, and then talk about where I want it to be saved. Now note this checkbox here, and it's asking us if we want to share the app in the same way as the map. So in this case, this particular map is shared with everyone, and I don't want to share it with everyone until I have finished my story map journal and done some checks. So just note that that's how that works for that checkbox right there in terms of creating the application. So next, we'll start the process of actually going through and building the particular story map journal here. So I can decide if I want to have the side panel float on top of the map or have it appear next to the map. So I'll choose that default option. Next, I need to put in here what's the title that I want to show up inside my story map journal. And this is what will appear inside of the the title within inside the application. So this can be different from the item title if you'd like. In this case, I'll just have it be the same thing. And next is orienting us to the content here. So, just like we showed in slide form, we have several different options for what we want to appear on the main stage, whether that be a map, an image, a video, or a web page. I'll start here with the particular map that I started. So, remember when I started sharing this a few minutes ago, I started this from the severe weather map. So that's what I'll pick. I'll choose an overview map and legend here to be included. And so now this is really kind of where the journal part of the story map journal comes into play. This is, basically the narrative text that will go along with this particular map. So I'll just simply put in some information here. I can configure this, however I want. Maybe you want to highlight this particular section and make that bold. I can also put in links to other information here if I want to. So, oops. Let's see. So if I've got a source URL that I want to make available and provide links here, I can do that. So just like many of the other blogging type software that's out there, we've got these options inside here of the story map journal to create those pages. And so there we go. Here we see the title that I created for this particular story map journal, and I've added in the first page with some descriptive text here in the map. So I'll go ahead and save this, and I'll continue on in terms of making a story map journal for a daily situation awareness briefing purposes. So I'll go ahead and add in another section here. So maybe for this next section, I want to add something along the lines of flooding. So next, I want to select my web map. So I can either search my content, my organization, ArcGIS Online, or my favorites, or I can simply just paste in the particular ID of the web map that I want to use. So this will be our flooding page inside the story map journal. And I'll go ahead and add in some descriptive text here for this particular page that gives some context. Again, I want to provide hyperlink to the source content. If others want to go out and look at this web map more directly, that's just how I'm setting up this particular application. And now we've added in the second page inside our story map journal. I'll add in another section here for earthquakes. So the same type of thing. I want to select a web map. In this case, I'll just simply use the ID for the particular web map that I want to include. And now, I want to take a minute here and explore some of the different options here. So if I go to custom configuration for the location, I can override the default extent of the web map and have that be at any kind of particular location that I want to include. So I'll put in a custom configuration there for the location. I'll keep the content the same, but maybe for example I want to have a pop-up turned on by default. So I'll click on this earthquake here in Montana, and I'll go ahead and have the pop-up for that particular earthquake show up by default as I'm building and configuring this particular application. So now I'll go ahead and hit next, and then again put in the narrative context. Again, this is kind of the journal part to our story map. Make hyperlink, add in some hyperlink text here inside here. I'm going to go ahead and add in some additional text inside here. So maybe I want to zoom to the United States, and what I'm going to do now is add in a main stage action inside here to allow us to change the extent for this particular web map. So I'll just click here for the main stage action, and I'll am deciding what extent that I want to apply. So now that I've done that, you'll notice here that by default we're zoomed out to kind of North America, but now using this main stage action I can zoom in here to the US. So that's just kind of one example of some of the main stage actions here you can apply to your story map journal. And then finally, for purposes of demonstration, I also wanted to add in a section where I include a link to an application. So in this case, I'm going to provide a link to a specific app. In this case, it's a custom application. And I've got some options here for how I want to configure it. So do I want to simply fit the application to the current window, have it fill the screen or center it? This option also comes into play for images as well. I also want to uncheck the checkbox here for unload when the reader navigates away. So this is a good way to have the content all loaded and ready to go inside your story map journal, so it doesn't have to load the content when you're flipping through it. So it's a great way to kind of keep it, ready to go and very responsive in terms of sharing this information with executives or decision makers. One of the best practices there. So again, I'll add in some narrative, text, provide the link here, the URL link to the particular application. And there, now we've added in inside here an app instead of a map inside of the story map journal. Again, these can be, another option here would be to add in the operations dashboard. If you wanted to provide a view there that has some, the summary widgets and chart widgets, exposed. To do that, you'd simply, paste in the URL to the particular configuration of the web version of the operations dashboard inside here, and that's a way that we can have that particular page, show up for us here in the context of our story map journal. So next, let's take a look at the settings. So there's a couple of things that we want to look at here from a settings perspective. We can override our original decision in terms of how we want the panel to look. Here's some layout, options. So if we want to switch the content to the right-hand side, and if we want to make that smaller, just to give us more real estate to focus on our maps or apps inside the application. We can make decisions here in terms of the color theme, and we can override what we want. Make decisions on the text we want to use. If we want to go more of a classic, Times New Roman, look. Maybe there's a branding guideline that we're trying to follow for our organization. And then finally here, options for configuring, the header. We can include a custom logo here. Maybe you want to, so this is where you'd put in the URL for the logo to your organization or jurisdiction. Maybe you can additionally provide a link, so if people clicked on that, it could go to your organization's homepage, and simply I can simply hit apply, and we can see some of the changes that have been made to the particular theme of our application. Note here that now you see the font's been changed, the color scheme has been changed. We've got our custom logo here to represent our organization or jurisdiction, and included the link of how this can be passed through to our organization, wherever the case may be. And there we go. So now I've saved the application. I can view it live. So in this case, I'm just going to share this with my organization. Maybe I need to check with public information officer or my manager before we make this fully public. But in this case, I'll save it with inside my organization, and the View Live link here takes us into the live view of the application. Note here that some additional checks have been done to see if there's any issues detected with the story maps. Maybe some of the web maps weren't made public. Maybe there's some sharing issues that we need to address with either the web maps or services that are inside the application. And I can see now I'm able to get a sense of what this app would look like for our users, and simply flip through the pages. And if I see something that I want to change or make different inside the application, I can do that, and I can go back in here to edit mode and further make any updates or changes to the particular application. Maybe I want to reorder the content and have different elements show up in different order. So I can do that if I want to delete pages or hide them until I'm ready. Those are some of the other options that are available to us here in the configuration options for building and organizing our story map journal. Again, just like if you're in desktop, make sure to save the configuration of your web map, and you'll be off and running. So there we go. There we have a tour, a live example of how to create a story map journal for your own, organization. In this case, we use the example of a daily briefing as an example from kind of a blue sky day of how we want to put together a story map journal. But again, these can be configured, specifically for incidents. Maybe you want to have pages for, ESFs or emergency support functions or essential elements of information to give a tour of something for a particular incident perspective, or maybe there's a mitigation issue that you want to highlight. Again, these are great ways to convey information to decision makers, to operation staffs, and in some cases even to the public. Okay, so that's the main content that we wanted to share today. As we always do with inside these webinars, we want to share additional information with you that may be relevant. So this month there's nothing new to report today in terms of the ArcGIS for Emergency Management Solutions. There's a lot of work that they're doing that they're just about ready to release, and we'll have a special guest on our next webinar in March that will give an overview of the new mitigation solutions that are coming. So stay tuned for next month for a more detailed update on the ArcGIS for Emergency Management Solutions. Additionally, on these webinars, we'd like to highlight, recent examples from the user community, and we'll spend a few more minutes, doing that today. So we've got an examples group inside, ArcGIS Online, and this group is public, where we index, new examples from the user community or Esri of great uses of the ArcGIS technology for the emergency management or disaster missions. So we've got 4 new examples that we will share with you today, and you'll have the links for these through in the information we'll provide with you after the webinar. If you have nominations, if you've got some apps that you've worked on that you wanted to share and you think others would be interested in, please let us know. Please send us an email, and we can get those items added to the group. So the first example that I wanted to share that's new today, well, first here's what the group looks like. The newest content shows up on top. It's an example from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and this is a great use of story maps to convey information. I believe this was put together for the recent snowstorm that hit the East Coast a couple of weeks ago. So here we see some of the weather information and weather radar. You can see information on the predicted snowfall that's expected over the next 72 hours. In this case, we can see that the Cape may get some snow here, a significant amount of snow shortly. There's another tab inside this story map for current weather warnings and watches. Also information here on current power outages. So again, I'm really proud of Massachusetts and what they've done here in terms of putting together this application in a great way of of doing exactly what we're trying to talk about on this webcast, and present information in an easy to use way, get that to the executives, decision makers, operations staffs, without having to go and look at a bunch of different websites, even including some of their branding and more details about their organization. And I appreciate the humor in this picture. So kudos to Desiree and the staff there at Massachusetts for putting that together. Another great example that was shared with us this month is a story map that shows the extent of flooding after the flooding over the holidays in the central U.S. and different pages here to show some of the various information. Some of the flooding extents and damage that was assessed by NGA here have been characterized in this map, and we can focus in on different areas. Also, some information on the flood gauges in conjunction with the flood hazard maps from FEMA. And just again, kind of a nice way to tell the story of the impact of this event, after the fact, to help raise awareness, to give a sense of where the damage was most severe, and presenting this information in kind of an easy to use format. Again, also adding in things like a swipe map inside here to see before and after imagery. The third new example that I wanted to share that was added to this group is this new drought tracker application that was put together by a team here at Esri. So they've got a map that always shows the current weekly drought index information, and here I've clicked on a county near Lake Tahoe, and I can see on the graph here at the bottom how the drought has affected this area over the past 15 or so years. So again, a new application here from Esri and some new feeds for the drought information. And so check out the new group, this particular group, to get more details on this particular application. And the final example that I wanted to share with here is something that some of our friends at NAPSG shared with us, a great example from inside the FEMA org. This is another configuration of the story map journal that gives a sense of things from a climate adaptation perspective. And then what's really compelling to me here about this particular application is they've done a great job of using videos, other web pages, and really kind of pushed the story map journal to the limit in terms of how it can convey information. Here we see an image that's embedded inside of the side panel to give more context to the changing climate. Provided some links to some web pages from various government agencies inside here, and really given a sense of how climate may be impacting. Here's an example of linking to a video inside of the story map journal, and again, this is embedded live, and you can see that I'm able to just play this and view this video and live and in real time. So it's another good example of configuring the story map journal, and then showing things like live maps and what we can expect in terms of temperature differences across the U.S. and in a regional area. So in this case, I'm a little bit focusing more kind of on the structural elements inside of the web map, and look for more details on this particular application here shortly as we hear from our friends at FEMA and NAPSG, who will be sharing more details on this. So again, those are just some examples that have been included for us here, included for you here in this examples group that's public. We'll be sending out that link to you, after the webcast. One final kind of note. Just wanted to make sure that, and I think we've mentioned it on some of these previous webcasts, is that the services that are coming from this particular URL, tmservices1.esri.com, from our tech marketing group, those are going to be retired at the end of the year. But don't worry, though, all of these services are now a part of ArcGIS Online and part of the product. So the data itself isn't going away, it's simply that the URLs are changing. So make sure that you update your URLs inside your maps and 1,000 apps, by the end of the year, by the end of 2016, before this, server, these set of servers get turned off. So, blog post just went out this morning. We'll be sharing this link with you, after the webcast, and provide some more details. So. That concludes what I wanted to give an update on. I think Chris has a couple of other things he wanted to talk about before we close out and open it up to questions. So go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Jeff. So a couple things real quick before we get to your questions. I wanted to make you all aware that the Disaster Response Program now has a Facebook page. Please take a look at the URL there. That's where we'll be sharing examples of this kind of work that's being done in response to disasters around the world. We'll also be sharing information about events that you might be interested in, and some documentation, best practices, how-to guides that may help you in your work. So on Facebook, Esri Disaster Response Program might be a page that you want to follow. Next steps after we get through questions are to take a look at the resources that Jeff presented in the webinar. Our next webinar will be next month on March 3rd at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and as we said, it's the Mitigating Hazards and Assessing Risk with ArcGIS Online. We're really excited. It's a new solution template that's being released, and we'll have special guests from the solutions team who developed this template with a lot of input from many of you in the user community, FEMA. It follows national guidance on how to do this, and will help you with things like grant eligibility, identifying risk, and seeing how mitigation programs are being effective. Please let us know if you have any questions, ideas, or suggestions, things you want to see, suggestions for improving the webinar series, topics that you're interested in, or just want to reach out and say hi. Our contact information is there. Please let us know if you have anything that you need. We have two Twitter accounts that you might want to follow. We have the GIS and Public Safety one, where you'll see a lot of information about public safety at large. And then the Esri DRP one is specific to disaster response. Again, we share a lot of the information that you also see on the Facebook page through those accounts. And if you want to be updated when maybe we're responding to a disaster in your area, or you want to see kind of some of the latest and greatest things that are going on, some of which Jeff presented in this presentation, that'd be a good way for you to get a heads up that those things are occurring. The Federal GIS Conference, if you're not aware, is happening the end of the month in Washington, D.C. If you're in the area, please stop by. There's going to be neighborhoods set up on the showcase floor, and Jeff and I will be there in the public safety showcase. So if you're there, please come see us. If you're in the area, please come to the conference and come see us. We'd be happy to talk to you about anything that you need, or give you some help if you're facing some challenges in your particular organizations. San Diego, then again, the National Security Summit and Public Safety Summit and the Users Conference are early this year. We keep putting this out every month because we want to make sure everybody knows it's in June this year. Normally it's in mid-July. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is in San Diego, so we had to adjust the schedule accordingly next summer. So be aware that that's the end of June, and put it on your calendar so that we can hopefully see you there. We'll be there all week. The National Security Summit, if you have not attended, is a lot of subjects that are very, very pertinent to emergency management. And you get to see a lot of examples of some of the great work that's going on around the world. With that, Jeff, I think you got some questions if you want to go through a couple of those.
Sure. You want? Was there any, Chris, that you thought I should start with here?
Had a lot about questions about permissions. If you're creating a map journal, how can you control who can see it and work with it?
Great question. So, a map journal is simply an item like any of the other web maps with inside, ArcGIS Online. So if I go, so the same, rules apply from a permission, perspective. The same, conventions. We can either have that be, private and only available with inside, only visible to you. Let's go back and look at the last example here. So this is the web map the story map journal that I just created, and now I can see that I've only shared this with my organization. So this is how I control the permissions for the particular story map journal. If I were to uncheck this, it would be private and only available to me. The next level up is I can make that available with a set of groups or a specific group. Maybe that's an incident group, for example, or an operations group. I can make that available to the organization, or I could make that available publicly and if it's public, no one would need to log in for that to see that particular story map journal. So, story map journals, the same things apply in terms of the permissions. So that's one way to look at this and to control these. So, okay. Yeah, so that should, hopefully that helps answer some of the questions about sharing and permissions. There's a couple of other questions about training for this particular application. Obviously, this webinar is one example, and the recording of this will be available. Well, also there's a tutorial that's available on the Story Map Journal's website, and we'll send you that link that gives you a step-by-step tour of how to create a story map journal. Additionally, one of the things that we've created as a part of the disaster response program, and I forgot to mention this, is a specific user guide. So we have a user guide that we've created that walks you through the steps of how to create a story map journal, and additionally provides some links to some of the other details. So we'll provide some of those additional training links to you in some of the emails that we see, or in some of the emails that we'll provide to you after this webcast. Let's see. What are some other questions here? Yeah, the recording will be made available, and it'll be on the videos section of our industry site. There's some questions about our story map journal specifically designed for display on large screens. So that's obviously one way to access these is on large screens where you have lots of real estate, but I believe that these are responsive in design. So if you are to look at these on a mobile device, it will reconfigure for the real estate that's available. So many of the applications that are developed by Esri as a part of ArcGIS these days are responsive in design and should reconfigure for the various real estate that you have out there. Any other questions, Chris, that you saw that I've missed we should address?
I had a question earlier about ways to configure the size of the side panel, and we also had a question. User likes to use presentation mode up at the front of the EOC, and what's your recommendation for using the map journal to replace or supplement that?
So to change the side panel size, that's again here under settings and under layout options. So we can kind of either have a small, medium, or large, side panel. So that's where we can configure that. One other thing that I should mention is that these the code for this application is actually available on GitHub. So if whatever the team has put together here for you needs to be extended, that you can also download the source code and extend this, further. If you wanted to, for example, if you wanted this to take up 70% of the screen, that's something that you could do. So again, to change the side panel size, there's just here under settings. So that's a great question about presentation mode of ArcGIS Online. Obviously, what we've shown here takes a human to hit the next button and to advance the pages. And as someone indicated, the presentation mode of web maps is a great way to have things run in an unattended fashion. I believe that that is also one of the requirements or pieces of feedback that our Story Map Journal team has heard is hoping for a way that the Story Map Journal could advance so the pages could be advanced in an unattended way. So that is not something, that's not a behavior or a feature that's in place now, but I know that that is a piece of feedback that the Story Map Journal team has heard from the user community, and so I appreciate that you've brought that up. Any other questions, Chris?
We have one that's asking, can audio voiceovers and/or automated actions be added to a story map in a manner that allows a tour guide or audio book-like capability?
Oh yeah, great question. So yeah, there was a recent blog post on how to actually add audio to this as a part. So it's just another kind of web element. If we wanted to play a particular file, there's certainly you can add in audio as another element inside here. So just think of this as a blog, and a blog that's heavily focused on maps. So those same type of constructs apply, and so audio could definitely be included in here, and we'll have to dig up the link to send to you in the in the email about how to do that, because that's been a common question.
Got time for a couple more. One is, if I have an embedded web page in my map journal and the web page is migrated to a new URL, will my map journal automatically follow the web page to its new URL, or do I need to manually change the link?
Yeah, so yeah, great question. So if the Story Map Journal won't automatically update the link if that moves to a new location, so that's something that you would need to go in there and check, and that's something that you would need to go in there and manually update. But that's where these fix issues features of the Story Map Journal really kind of come into play. So if you go to that My Story Map Journals URL and check your pages, it would give you red flags if there's links that are broken or permissions that are incorrect.
Next question is, do you need to have the role of publisher to create a story map, or can you do it as a user?
I believe that you can simply do this with user credentials. This also works with personal accounts. So for configuring web maps and apps, I believe that only the user role is needed.
And our last question is, if you'd like to, we have some users that like to lock the legend open. How can they do that?
I think you can have the legend display by default, but that may require some advanced. I believe that may require some advanced customization. So we can have it open here by default, but I don't believe that there's a way to force that to be open. Users would have the ability to collapse it. So again, if that's something that was a hard requirement, that you could extend that by downloading the code from GitHub.
Okay, great. All right, that's it for the questions. I'd like to thank everybody for their time. As we said earlier, if you miss anything or want to look at the recording of this, please go to the Esri Emergency Management Industry page. We look forward to seeing you next month when we talk about the mitigation solution. And as always, please stay safe, and thank you for the great work that you're doing. Thank you.